Hello, my name is Lisa Weideman. I'm a student at Liberty University pursuing a master's in education for the middle grades. I am presenting a lesson plan today prepared for Education 623, and the lesson plan is intended for the 6th grade English classroom, and the focus is on image and poetry. As I don't have access to a classroom or to the smart board or projector technology that was listed in my lesson plan, I will approximate the information that was intended for use with a smart board or projector with the use of a PowerPoint presentation. Good morning, class. Today we're going to be talking about image and poetry. Can anyone tell me what an image is? Yes, Mary. A photograph? Yes, a photograph is definitely an image. Anyone else? Mark? A painting? Yes, a painting would be an image. The definition of image that we usually think of is the representation of the external form of a person or a thing that we use in art. So if we take a picture of a dog in a photograph, then that photograph is a representation or an image of a dog. And if we paint a picture of a sunset, then that painting becomes a representation or an image of a sunset. Obviously, it does not become an actual sunset. So when we use image in literature, it's a little bit different than when we use it in art. An image in literature is a representation in words of a sensory experience or of a person, place, or object that can be known by one or more of the senses. So it is similar to an image in art because it is a representation of something. Um, it does extend a little bit broader than in art because the words used in an image can represent things that any of our five senses can pick up. All right, before we move on to dissecting the images in poetry, we're going to look a little bit more at the different types of images that are in poetry. Remember, the images can be represented and known through the five senses. Does everyone remember what these are from elementary school? Sight, right? Hearing, good. Smell, right? Taste. And the last one? Yes, that's right. Touch, a sense of touch. So there are different words that represent these senses. Something that you can see is called a visual image. Something that you can touch is a tactile image. Something that you can smell is an olfactory image. Something that you can hear is an auditory image. And something that you taste is a gustatory image. Now, as we examine poetry, it's fine if you use sight, touch, smell, hearing, and taste. You don't have to use um, the more technical terms. Another way that we can classify images is as literal or figurative. The red wheelbarrow is a great example of literal images. We have the red wheelbarrow, the white chicken, even the rain on the wheelbarrow. These are great examples of concrete, literal images. And even if the poem has a greater metaphorical meaning, the images themselves are literal. Some other examples of literal images would be black coffee, a bumpy clay mug, soft green grass beneath bare toes. But images can also be figurative, which means that they depart from the literal sense of the word and instead they are metaphorical. Figurative images can include phrases such as the mug, bumpy and uneven as newly turned earth, or the heavy black chains of depression. We know that the mug is not actually made of newly turned earth, and of course the as in this phrase is a great indicator that it is a figurative image. The image of newly turned earth is meant to emphasize how bumpy and uneven the mug is. Also, depression does not actually have physical heavy black chains. This is a metaphor to represent how oppressive depression can feel. Now I'm going to read a poem by T.S. Eliot called Preludes. You can look at the board to follow along. Try to listen and pick out the images as I read. The winter evening settles down with smell of steaks in passageways. 6 o'clock. The burnt-out ends of smoky days, and now a gusty shower wraps the grimy scraps of withered leaves about your feet and newspaper from vacant lots. The showers beat on broken blinds and chimney pots, and at the corner of the street a lonely cab horse steams and stamps, and then the lighting of the lamps. Now we're going to identify some of the images in Prelude. Remember as we go through this that an image in poetry is language that calls up a physical sensation appealing to us at the level of any of our five senses. So if something brings to mind a visual image, an auditory image, a tactile image, an image you can taste, an image you can smell, then it qualifies as an image in poetry. Starting back at the beginning of Prelude, we read, "Smell of steaks in passageways." This phrase gives a pretty good clue to the fact that it is an image since the word smell is used in the text. Smell of steak gives us a scent or olfactory image, but if we include the next two words, in passageways, this might bring to mind walking down an apartment building hallway where the smell of steak wafts around, which is an even stronger image and adds a visual context. Moving on to the next image, we have the burnt out ends of smoky days. This is obviously a figurative image, as days don't have physical ends and they can't actually be burnt out. But what do you think that Eliot could mean by this figurative image? Alex? Yes, that's very good. Anyone else? Mandy? Yes, I can definitely see that too. One of the great things about poetry is there are so many interpretations, especially to figurative poetry. This could be a number of different things, but I picture the setting sun, muted by the smoke of a town at the turn of the 20th century, when everyone would have been using fire to heat their homes and cook with. And at the burnout ends brings to me an image of the sun almost down, almost extinguished. The next image is a gusty shower, which could be a tactile image if you have just come in from the rain. And in a very long, complex image, which can be broken into smaller images, the grimy scraps of withered leaves about your feet and newspapers from vacant lots. As separate images, we have grimy scraps, withered leaves, your feet, newspapers, vacant lots, and when you add all of these images together, you get an overall image of the things that the autumn wind has blown in, the difficulty in stepping through or past them. Next, we have the visual image of broken blinds and chimney pots with the addition of showers, beat, which could add an auditory aspect to the image. And then a lonely cab horse combined with steams and stamps, which brings another auditory image to the visual of a cab horse on an empty street becoming impatient to get home. Now we're going to read some poetry together as a class. Do I have a volunteer to read Summer Night by Alfred Lord Tennyson? Amy, yes. In class, as Amy reads, please look out for two things. The first thing is much of the poetry that we will be reading or that you will read in your life might have words that are unknown to you. So make sure as we read through this that you take note of words that you don't know the definition of. And also keep on the lookout for images in this poem. Amy, go ahead. Great. Now, who found some images that they would like to share with the class? John? Yes, that's a very good one. Yep. Anyone else? Susan? Oh, yeah, that one is my favorite. That's a very vivid image. Thank you for sharing. Okay, now, do we have a volunteer to read The Shark by Edwin John Pratt? And this one is a little more simple language than the last one, so be assured that you might not have difficulty reading the words. Mark? Yes, thank you. Okay, and did anyone find any words that they didn't understand in this poem? No? No, they were all pretty clear. Okay, and what about images? Who saw some images? Susan? Yes, that like a piece of sheet iron is a really great metaphorical image in this poem. Dan? A three-cornered fin. Good job. That is a descriptive visual image. Now that you've all had some practice in identifying images in poetry, we're going to spend the rest of the class doing individual work and group work. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go over the 4 poems individually in the poetry packet. Anna, would you mind handing out these poems while I continue to explain the process? Thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned, there are 4 poems, and you're going to need your highlighter to highlight all of the images that you see. If you have time, then you can also classify the images as literal or figurative, or you can write down the sense that you use for the image. Also, you'll want to circle any words that you don't know with your pen so that you can write them in your definitions notebook. We will go over those later together as a class. So go ahead and get started. I'll give you 10 minutes to go through and find all of the images that you can in the 4 poems. Okay, so now we're going to get into groups. You're going to keep your poetry packet that you've highlighted, and you're going to stay at your table and work in your table groups. Um, Table 1 will be working on poem 1, Table 2 will be working on poem 2, Table 3 will be working on poem 3, Table 4 will be working on poem 4. And what we're going to want to do is discuss these with your group mates. You're going to want to defend your answers for images, and you might want to ask others to defend their answers. Um, and what we want to come up with is a consensus on images in the poem that you've been assigned. So go ahead and we'll work on this for about 10 minutes. Okay, great. Now that you've had a chance to identify the images in your poem as a group, one person will need to present the images and classify well. Okay, thank you for working so well together. Now what we're going to do is each person on their own is going to create a word image. And so this will need to be at least 3 words long and make sure that it uses at least one of the 5 senses. And we're not going to spend long on this, maybe 5 to 7 minutes to write down your word image. And we've just got a few minutes for everyone to present their own image, and then we will talk about them. Okay, great. The 5 minutes is up, and it looks like everyone is pretty much done writing their word image. So now we are going to present them, and the class will identify the type of image that you've created. If it's which sensory image, type of sensory image it is, and also if it is literal or figurative. Great job today on working together collaboratively in your groups and coming up with consensus on image and defending your answers. Great job on presenting your images today too. I'm happy to say that every student was able to produce a representation of a sensory experience that could be observed by at least one of the five senses. And I have confidence that you have all grasped the concept of image in poetry. Way to go.